Cool. So I'm here with Judi, and Judy's a body confidence coach, and she did my Gifts of the Sacred Wound program last year. Volunteered to kind of help me try it out and see where we'd end up. And it was a fascinating journey. Judy was like, so what was going on in your life that you thought I could help you?
Mm. So, for as long as I could remember, I have always had like this sort of low lying level of anxiety in my life. Well, actually, what I should say is I probably wasn't aware that I even had that until like a couple of years ago. And this sort of low level anxiety, although I have it, I can still function quite well. But it was I was becoming more aware that it was an issue, and it was really brought about by hypervigilance. So I have hypervigilance because I was adopted, and I've learned through doing my own sort of research and so on and so forth that people who are adopted, they tend to, after they've been given up for adoption, they go about their life being very aware of the potential dangers around them because they're worried that they're going to be rejected, and this kind of manifests itself in sort of a low level anxiety. And it was only about 3 years ago when I went on this journey and discovered my birth family and did a load of research that I realized that having a low level anxiety is quite common for adopted people. But I've lived most of my life with it, but I didn't really realize that I had it because I've never known any different effectively. So that's something that I've been living with for quite for all my life, and it's something that through chatting with Jacqui that we thought that we might be able to sort of potentially kind of unpick and unravel and get to the bottom of. And other things that I was struggling with that again come with being adopted, feeling that I'm not good enough, and also not setting very healthy boundaries with other people. And so, with discussion with Jacqui about what she does and using things like theta healing, we thought that we could perhaps get to the bottom or the root cause of what was really going on. Because I tried lots of other things in the past, all have been helpful. So I've had counseling and coaching, but they never really, I always felt like there was something more there. I always felt like there was something much deeper. And so when Jacqui and I had a chat about it, we realized that I needed a way to kind of access my subconscious, because really that's where that sort of hypervigilance, fear of rejection, feeling not good enough, and that inability to sort of set healthy boundaries, that was all going on at a very deep subconscious level. And so that was where I really needed to go, and that is where other interventions hadn't
Mm.
hadn't allowed me to sort of dig down deep enough to get to.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Because I mean, it started off. It was just a coffee chat, wasn't it?
Yeah.
A chill coffee chat, and then it was like, oh, okay, cool. Let's let's do this then. So,
Yes.
I always find it really hard to explain like how I work, what I do. So, how would you describe what we did together?
That's a really good question. I mean, it's a very calm and peaceful and safe space, which for me is really important if I'm going to open up. And I can only imagine if you're going to delve into my self conscious, it's got to feel safe because, I've obviously gone through a lot of my life being hyper vigilant and not feeling that safe. So if we're going to go there, it's got to feel safe. And it's a bit like when because we did theta healing together, it's a bit like going into this wonderful world of kind of like imagination, but it's got characters and symbols and imagery. And it kind of, that space allows you to sort of dig into your self conscious and try to understand what is going on, and then start to sort of clear out anything that is really holding you back or limiting you, but in a really sort of safe, warm, comfortable space. And I mean, we certainly talked about things that I just never thought would come up just because of, the space that you created when I was in that I guess you call it a theta state. Um, yeah, so it's kind of like, yeah, this wonderful world of imagery and symbols. And I know we came up with some crazy things in my sessions, or I came up with the crazy things, but some of the imagery and symbols that came up for me were quite interesting. But yeah, they really, and then the questions that you asked when I'm there really just helped to dig in and understand what the heck is going on in my subconscious, and more importantly, what it's trying to protect me from, and how we can start to gradually remove those layers of protection.
Yeah, that was always the intent behind it, was to go slowly and honor that there is protection there, and you don't want to slam through the protection because it's just gonna get harder. Yeah, I probably should clarify that the symbols and the imagery and stuff is my I use theta healing with other stuff that I do. So that's not, it's not a general theta healing thing, but yeah, it's how I've learned. I think that's it. Like, all the healing modalities take you to your own natural skills, don't they? And yeah, that's what I've discovered through, yeah, that this is fun to play with symbols and stuff.
Yeah, it was quite fun. Yeah, it was certainly non-threatening, and it felt very safe. So yeah, it worked well for me anyway.
Oh, good. So what, since we did like 6 months, didn't we, of kind of like one session a month, giving it space in between to kind of just let it settle, let synchronicity come in. You did your own kind of like using your own tools. What changes have you noticed since we did the work?
I mean, I think they're quite subtle, and I think that they sort of happened automatically. And it wasn't until after they happened I would kind of go, well, hang on a minute, this has just happened. I don't think I would have done that before. So it wasn't really obvious to me. So it would be things like, because of that fear of not being good enough, sometimes I don't always show up as visibly as I might do. So in my business, it was, being more visible. And I joined this new membership group, and I found that I was showing up more consistently there and being more visible, to the point where we have this thing every month where they highlight a member every month. And I'd obviously been so visible that I was the member of the month, and my contributions to the group and the things that I'd shared in there. And that was like, oh, wow, okay, that wouldn't normally happen to me because I just wouldn't show up and be that visible. So that was something that happened. Also around sort of setting boundaries, just being more, feeling that I could actually say no to things and not say yes to everything, because quite often, particularly with friends and that, they'll ask me if I want to do something, and I'll kind of feel like I have to say yes because I don't want to upset them. And so it was feeling like I had permission to say no to things, or being clear about what I wanted to do, and not feeling like I had to justify why I didn't want to do something, just saying, well, no, I don't want to do that, or I don't have time to do that, or I don't feel like doing that. So, and that is kind of quite a big change for me, because I'll normally just say yes because I'm worried about being rejected by them, I guess, would be what's going on there. I'm just trying to think other things that have happened as well. Like I said, they're so sort of subtle. I don't really realize till after the fact what is actually happened. And I feel like just maybe being more of myself, and like I'm getting a new website done, for example, and I really felt with this website that I really wanted to show more of my personality, rather than, I'm not saying that I create, or maybe I do, more of a curated version of myself, but just really showing more of my personality, that I'm a human being. I like to have a laugh. It's not all so serious all the time. So it's about bringing things into my website design and imagery, and that kind of show that I now have a personality outside of being a coach who helps women with their body image. So I'd say it's sort of subtle things like that. And I definitely feel now that I've got greater awareness of when my inner child is running the show. And I think that's probably one of the really big things I got out of the work I did with you, Jacqui, is realizing that, you know, there's like a small baby that effectively has been running my life
Mm.
because it was longing for a mother that it never had. And so I'm more aware of when that inner child is trying to run the show. And I've learned that, you know, I can self-parent and I can self-soothe. I don't have to constantly long for that mother anymore. And so that's been again, that's been subtle, but I've noticed that instead of feeling this longing, I'm able to just really soothe myself and know that I, as the adult version of me, I have what I need and I can take care of myself. And I can also reassure that little version of me that I am an adult and I can do it. I can look after both of us and I can take care of us. We've been together this long, so I can take care of us both. So I think there's some of the things. I'm sure there are probably more other things that maybe even
You're
more
not the only person to say it's very subtle.
subtle.
Like
Yeah,
people as well have said kind of. I suppose because we go so deep that it is kind of, oh wait a minute, that's different.
yeah.
Yeah.
It's a bit like that. It's like it's after the fact, and it's like a few hours later, a day later, and you're like, hang on a minute, that is different from what I would normally do. And you're almost like, I'm not sure how that happened,
Mm.
but it was happening subconsciously rather than me having to think about it.
Yeah, I don't think I'm ever going to forget that last session that we had, because it was like to um it was right down to that moment of like that baby being taken away, wasn't it? And
Yeah,
just proves that babies are not stupid little creatures that don't know what's going on. Like it, baby Judy knew full well what was going on.
I
And
know, and that's the tragedy of it because you know, as an adopted person, I I don't necessarily think that adoption is good or bad. And I know some people can say, oh, it's the most amazing thing ever and it's wonderful. And some people say it's awful. I think there's like a halfway house, you know, but it's not the way that it was probably portrayed in the, you know, 1940s, 50s, 60s and 70s when I was born, that, you know, you can take a baby away from its natural mother and give it to someone else and it won't know any different.
mm,
And, you know, up until a few years ago, I thought the same thing.
mm,
It was only because I went into reunion with my birth family that I decided I needed to learn more about what being an adoptee really meant and sort of the psychology behind it. And, you know, it is classified, it is a trauma.
mm,
And I don't think people understand that. And, you know, even if you're a baby who was premature and is separated from your mother and you've been in an incubator, you can also exhibit some of the same um, you know, you can show signs of, you can have trauma as well effectively because that is also a trauma, so it's almost like you were taken away from your mother.
mm.
So yeah, it's not a black or white thing, it can be a great thing. I just think that there needs to be greater understanding around it about the impact on the child and all the parties to
Yeah,
the
yeah,
adoption. It can be a marvelous thing, but there's certainly things that could be done to you know, manage the process better for everyone involved.
yeah, yeah.
But yeah,
Oh, and I know kind of like you're just going to keep expanding your toolkit, aren't you? And you're just going to keep learning more
yes,
and
yeah, absolutely. I just keep expanding my awareness and then trying to find ways to manage some of those coping strategies that I've had all my life that are not that healthy for me or those that I'm in relationships with.
mm,
So, and I think one of the things that this process with you, Jacqui, has helped is to raise that awareness level,
mm,
because without awareness, you can't make any changes. You can't have a different relationship with yourself or the people around you or the world around you. So it's certainly helped to raise my awareness level as well. And like you said, that will just keep expanding as I do this work. This is just the beginning, really.
Yeah. I know we always want it to be the end,
I
don't we?
know.
Kind of like, oh yeah, I'm gonna do this, and then I'm gonna live in like eternal bliss, and then it's the beginning. Okay, but it's I think kind of my intention for it is and you mentioned it before we started recording about like this understanding all the protection that's in place and not trying to smash through it. And I think when you develop that kind of like befriending
Yes.
attitude, that's where a lot of the even if stuff comes up afterwards, you have more of a trust that, oh, okay, my psyche thinks something important is going on. Okay, let's have a look at that.
Yeah, it's totally that, because if you don't kind of, obviously we're wired up for safety, and if you don't acknowledge the role that your inner critic or your inner child or whatever it is trying to warn you about something, if you don't acknowledge that and take it slowly, then it's just going to start shouting louder and louder and louder and kicking off more and more and more. So you do have to approach it in a very gentle manner, for sure. I mean, I didn't really realize that a small baby had been running my life or a large part of my life for the last nearly 50 years. But at least I have that awareness now, and I can do my best to try and reassure her and keep us both feeling safe and grounded.
Mm. Okay, thank you so much. And yeah, I'll have your details for your website.
Thank you, Jacqui. Like, if anyone's thinking about working with Jacqui, I highly recommend it. It's been so helpful to me. So on this amazing journey that I've been on, and she's made it, well, it's enjoyable. I'm learning about myself. I've been learning about myself. So thank you so much for the role that you've played in this journey that I've been on over the last 3 or 4 years.